Hi, art teacher here with you again, and nice to see you back. I've got sketchbook activity number 5 today, and I'll probably make this one kind of a shorter one. And the idea or the concept is composing your picture within a grid. Be sure to do your subscriptions, your likes, and leave a comment below if I'm unclear. Okay, so let me show you something I've done here. And I sort of drew this up just to illustrate the idea. And what I've done is drawn a grid, a 2" by 2" grid on this paper, and I used the grid to help me in drawing many of the things I'm placing throughout the picture. For instance, I have these pots for the potted plants, and I have these funny flowers which all kind of adhere to the grid. Also notice I use the grid, for instance, to find points. So here's a point where two grid lines come together, and I bring it down, this road down to the halfway point between these two grid lines here. I use the grid to make these houses and to be one side of the road over here. So I'm using the grid throughout the picture for a variety of different things. Now, listen, when you make a grid like that, it's going to be useful. You can use the grid lines for some of the objects you want to place in there. The lines that make up the grid, you can use those for some of the objects. Or you can use them to help you with placement of objects also. Okay? So in this case, I have this houses with hills with roads. I have these flowers that I've put in also. But you could do any subject you wanted using a grid like that. Again, all of these lessons for the sketchbook ideas, they should comprise more than just one drawing. Again, you could do a whole sketchbook just using grids in different ways to do different things. So let's go ahead and draw a grid and take it from there. But before I do, I'm going to show you a grid drawing I did that tied in with that abstract landscape idea. And this is a 1" by 1" grid as opposed to a 2" grid, because that's a much smaller sketchbook. So you can experiment with different sized grids in your picture. So on this one, let's go ahead and draw out a 2" by 2" grid to get you started. Now I have one of these special rulers called a T-square. That's really a nice thing to have. You know, I picked this one up, I think, at a yard sale for like maybe 50 cents or $1, but you'll pay more than that at any sort of art supply store. So if you don't have one, you can use a ruler for this also. Let me show you how to do it with a T-square first though. Okay, I have my T-square and my sketchbook. And when I go to make a grid, I take this part of the T-square and put it right against the edge of the sketchbook. And what that lets me do is make a little dot every 2 inches all the way across. So I've simply taken this, put it against the edge, and that allowed me to make a dot on every 2 inches. Now here's the cool part and why this thing is so useful. I can then take it, put this along the top, like that. I put this gray part here along the top, and that'll make sure that the line is perfectly straight and perpendicular to the top edge. And I just slide it over and do the next one. Slide it over and do the next one. Every time I'm just sliding it over to the next dot. Do the next one. Now this would take a lot longer if I did not have a T-square. If I had a regular old ruler or yardstick, that would take longer. So I was able to do all of those vertical lines very quickly and accurately with this. So you might want to get one of these. They have different kinds with different looks. I thought I had another one. I do have another one down here. but it's basically the same kind. There are wooded ones also, though. You'll see those around. Now I'm going to make the other dots, and again, going every 2 inches. I think that leaves me with 1 extra inch at the bottom. That's okay because these are not precise drawings. The grid is only there to help you, okay? It's not there for any other reason but to give you ideas for how to place things throughout your picture. Also, another thing that's helpful about having that grid is you can be sure that many parts of your picture are being addressed. If you have a grid, even if it's a 2 inch by 2 inch grid like that, it gives you an opportunity to see, am I neglecting this area in my picture? I have 4 grid boxes with nothing in them in this area. Maybe I need to get something interesting happening there. It's just a way to kind of check yourself. So anyway, I've drawn my dots. Now I'm going to draw my horizontal lines using my T-square. Again, this T-square can be very handy to have, especially on a larger sketchbook like this. So this should just take a minute, and every time I draw a new line, then I just slide it over to the next dot and draw the next one. It's not that hard. It's not that hard at all. There it is. Now, that's a pretty good, accurate grid I did in just a minute or two, and I did that with the help of my T-square. Now, if you don't have a T-square, I'm going to briefly go over how you can make a grid. If I didn't have a T-square and I wanted to make a grid on this paper, what I'd do is just take a regular ruler. Let's get my big metal ruler. I'd get my regular ruler and line it up, and I'm still putting a dot at every 2 inches. This ruler is so old that it's actually becoming a little worn out. So I can't see all the numbers too good. Anyway, what I did is make a dot on every 2 inches. Now I need to go to the other side, and that's what I'm doing right now. And when I go to the other side, once again, making a dot every 2 inches. And that's a great way to do it. Okay, there it is. What I've done now is make a dot on every 2 inches down this side and down that side. Let's go ahead then. I take my T-square and put it on one dot, then the other dot. Then that helps me line it up and go straight across. So what I do is, let me hold it up for this. Take my ruler. On this side, put it on a dot. Make sure it's right there. On that side, put it on a dot. Then, zippity-doo-dah, go straight across, and I have a nice horizontal line, which is parallel to the one above it. Okay, so I do that all the way down. Then I put my dots across top and bottom and do the same thing. And it takes a lot longer, but you end up with the same kind of grid you would get if you had a T-square. You can just do it about, probably just takes a fraction of the time with this. Now once you have your grid, that's when it gets kind of fun. And to tell you the truth, when I can't think of what I want to draw, but I know I want to do some drawing, but I don't know what, I do like to draw a grid. I usually make it lighter than this though. I don't make it so dark. I made it dark in this case so that you can clearly see what I'm doing. Normally I would go much lighter with a grid. So I look at my grid and I can start thinking about what I can place in different areas. For me, you know, I like to draw those birds made out of shapes. So why don't I could even take crayons on this to make the lines darker so you could see them good. And I could start thinking about where I want to put some of those. Okay, you can see there I went right along these grid lines. Okay, and that gave me a pretty good basis. Using this grid line here. Now I'm going to make these wings go up to 1.5 grid spaces. So it goes up beyond that grid line. It's a good way to kind of measure the proportions of things. And it's nice to make your lines, shapes, or other things you're drawing to make them line up nicely with the grid lines. And you can use that throughout the whole picture, and it adds a lot of unity to it. You know, you automatically have a lot of unity. And I can just keep adding interesting things from there. Okay? Give the grid a try. Give it a chance. See what you can do with it. Try to get creative. Come up with a lot of different things you can put in those grid boxes. And what I suggest you do is start developing that personal vocabulary of images that I keep talking about. In other words, that just was a fancy way of saying, just try to think of things that you like to draw and put that in there. Okay, you take care now. Have a good one.